And I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention that most people who have really, really high incomes don't tend to have high income in the years that follow. Here we're looking at millionaires, unlikely to stay millionaires for long. We're looking at the percent of millionaires who remained millionaires 1999 to 2007. Now, I have to point out here, when we use the term millionaire here, we're not talking about how much money these people own or their net worth. We're not talking about wealth. We're talking about people who earn $1 million in a single year. That's something that I still have to work on. This idea that millionaire can be used to refer to income as opposed to wealth. But they are using it here to describe people who earn $1 million or more in a single year. Now, they began to compare what happened to these people back in 1999, people who earned $1 million or more. Well, they start out with something like 675,000 Americans who earned $1 million or more in the first year. Within 1 year, that number dropped around 50%. You start out with 675,000 and you're down to 336,000 within a single year. 15%. If you start out originally with 100% of your millionaires, you're down to 15% by the second year, 8% by the third year, 7% and 4% by the fifth year. At the very tail end, several years later, there's a little bit of a spike. Evidently, call it an echo for all I know, something where there's a slight pickup. But even so, by the time you get way here, and what is it, this is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th year, you only have 38,000 people who are still earning $1 million or more a year, 9 years later. You start out with 675,000 people earning $1 million, and then you wind up with only 38,000 of those same people are still earning $1 million. A lot of people that have fantastic incomes over a short period of time don't continue to earn nearly as much in subsequent years. Now, a lot of these people that dropped out of the pool very quickly continue to make above average incomes, and frankly, a lot of them maintain lavish lifestyles. A lot of these people are filthy rich. But the idea that there's all these people that earn millions and millions of dollars year after year after year, that's actually very, very, very uncommon. And what this is showing you is, frankly, downward mobility in terms of income by very high income earners. Now, our recent recession appears to have reduced inequality somewhat, at least temporarily. And that's not unusual because inequality statistics tend to be cyclical. Inequality tends to increase when the economy is booming, and it tends to shrink when the economy is depressed during recessions and depressions. And you see pictures like this with Daddy Warbucks or the Monopoly Man with his pockets out and he's broke. Now, of course, a lot of rich people are anything but broke, but nevertheless, the extremes of wealth inequality have declined, and a lot of that has occurred at the top end of the income distribution. Here we're looking at recessions in the rich, comparing 2007 to 2009, looking at the percent changes. In particular, we're looking at IRS statistics. How much income was declared on tax statements? Back in from 2007 to 2009, people whose tax returns were declaring $200,000 and above, that shrank by 13%. Those declaring $1 million and more, those kinds of tax returns shrank by 39% over that 2-year interval. And finally, those declaring $10 million or more in income shrank a stunning 55%. You can also see similar decreases in terms of returns where they paid large amounts of taxes. Also a very rapid decline, especially by those paying very exorbitant levels of taxes. All of that suggesting that there was a shrinkage of high income earners. Total income among those from upper income households, and we can see similar trends for those declaring $200,000 or more, 2007 to 2009, a decline, and those earning $1 million or more, again, a fairly sharp decline. At least that's what we're seeing in IRS data. And by the way, we're seeing in other data as well. It's not just IRS data. change in after-tax income from 2007 to 2009. So the top 1%, this estimate from the Congressional Budget Office estimates something like a 37% decline in their income. The highest quintile, a 17% decline. And in fact, even though there were broad declines in income, after-tax income, across all of the quintiles except for the lowest one, most of the declines were much smaller for middle and lower income households. And for the bottom 20%, there was actually a 3% increase in after-tax income. Here you can look at a pie chart showing the share of income after taxes, and I'll just leave it to you to glance at it, but it's showing a very, very similar picture. For example, if you look at the highest quintile, by 2009 they're taking home a smaller slice of the pie than they were back in 2007. Again, showing greater equality after the Great Recession. Now, here we're looking at our last little graph here for this presentation. Here we're looking again at what happened with the income for very high income earners. The top 1% share from 1996 to 1997 levels were achieved by 2009. Let me restate that. I said that horribly. This graph shows the share of income attributed to the top 1% of income earners from 1980 to 2009. The top 1% income earners' share peaked in 2007, taking home 22.8% of all income in the U.S. And it declined precipitously in the period afterwards. It went from 22.8% to 16.9% by 2009. That's about where it was way back in 1996, 97. In other words, after peaking out during the Great Recession, there was enough shrinkage in income among very high income earners that they found themselves back where they were in the late 90s. Basically a decade and more of rising, taking a bigger share of the economic pie disappeared in a very, very short period of time. The larger point is simple. Income inequality, especially at the top, appeared to shrink during the Great Recession. Now we're still waiting to see figures on a little more recent data. It would not surprise me at all, particularly with the stock market increasing in value so rapidly in the last couple of years, to see income inequality and especially wealth inequality rising fairly rapidly over the last couple of years. But not having numbers that I've looked at in great detail, I'm going to withhold any strong judgment and just say that we'll wait and see. At any rate, that concludes our discussion of social mobility in the United States. Thank you very much.